Hey everybody, welcome back to Encounter. So we've just finished a 4-week series called Pathways, and we're hoping that you're feeling a little better about living out God's will, because we believe that's really important, and we want to be following and walking where He's leading us. And so as a natural follow-up to that conversation, we want to talk about life after high school. What does it look like? Now, some of you are graduating this year, and adulthood is staring you right in the face. And some of you in grade 9 and 10, you're maybe not thinking that far ahead. But we're super excited because we've got Tanner Kennedy from InterVarsity at Brock. And we get to have a great conversation with a great guy around what it looks like to prepare now to get ready for those days when they come, because they're going to come soon enough. So this series is really about how to live well, whether you're heading into university, college, maybe the workforce, mission, gap year, whatever that looks like. We want you to live well beyond high school. So we're really glad to have Tanner. Welcome, man. It's really great to see you.
I'm glad to be here too.
It's been a little while because of COVID, obviously, and all those challenges that we've all experienced. Mm-hmm. But before we dive into the conversation, you've got some great news, and we're hoping to get a little bit of an update on life.
Yeah, so John is prodding me to share that I'm going to be a first-time father on April 4th or close to that range. Yeah. So yeah, that's very exciting. It'll definitely change the way I live my own life. So I'm sure each of you are asking questions. I'm asking myself questions.
For sure. Yeah. Any chance of early, you're getting the phone call today, hey, Tanner, you need to come home? Is there any?
I mean, it's possible. Okay. It's possible.
All right. Hopefully not, but yeah, hopefully we can get through this one.
Yeah.
But, so how long have you been at Brock as a campus minister?
So this would be the end of my third year. So young enough to still learn lots, but at least bear a decent amount of time to speak to it.
Right on. Cool. Well, hey, as you know, we wanted to draw students into a conversation about life after high school, and we want them to feel a little more prepared, a little more comfortable, establishing some patterns in their lives that when they take that step beyond high school, they're going to live well, because we want them to be successful, particularly in their faith. So the first question I want to ask is whether a student is graduating from grade 12 or they're in grade 9, 10, and they've still got a couple of years to go. What can students do to prepare, to carry on faith well in university or life after high school? What are some things they have to put in place?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of lists.
Yeah.
There's a tremendous list of things I recommend, but I would just go with my number one thing that I've kind of seen and heard is the initiative to connect, and having that being not something that is external to either your parents or your church or something does for you, but really having this internal drive to, hey, church is really important for me. I need to connect to a local church wherever I need to move to, or hey, there's a Christian community of university students, me on my campus, that would be beneficial for me to go to, like university. Or hey, I really need to be mentored, and it would be beneficial for me to have mentors in my life so I can talk to, ask questions. So just asking ahead of who are people older, very wise Christian mentors who I can connect with on a basis. So that'd be my number one. Okay.
So definitely to have somebody speaking into your life and finding community. What does community look like right now at Brock in terms of just COVID and virtual? How's the experience been? Yeah,
it's definitely been an unusual experience. So I think we're still learning and things changing all the time. It doesn't always look the same, but I think we've all felt kind of a loss of that in-person community, and we are looking forward to having that again. But we are confident knowing we will in a decently short time. But until then, what has been encouraging is that our students have been sharing testimonies of either how sharing their faith has gone with their friends who are Christian, and kind of the struggles, but also the joys there. Sharing testimonies of how God provided for them in their darkest need, or when they were feeling lonely, anxious, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's really brought people together, especially the videos when they can see the faces, when they can't see that in person.
Now, a lot of people, they tend to isolate, or they tend to kind of do things on their own, or they lose connection. Why is community so vital? Why is it so important to get established in a church, or in your case on campus if they've traveled, even at an InterVarsity fellowship, a community of believers on campus? Why is it so vital to a student's spiritual growth?
I think it's not only just a spiritual growth, but even just from a holistic health perspective, we as humans are, and there's a degree, right? Like some students are more introverted, some students are more extroverted.
Yeah.
There's a degree as to our social bandwidth, but
Yeah.
we're all, like, the vast majority of us are hardwired by God to be people who do live in community and people who do need social connections. So that's something that God has done in the beginning in the garden, and God is doing at the end when all of his believers from every tribe, nation, tongue will be with him. So there's something beneficial and can't quite put it with words, but mysteriously wonderful about being with community. So that's why it's just really important. And I think whether you're someone who just has that like initiative or confidentness or to take the initiative to make connections, it's great. But if you know yourself, if you know you're someone like my wife, who is a social introvert, who she really loves the connections she has, but just has a hard time making those connections, that's when you can ask your friends to help you with that, or asking your current church group, your parents, mentors, etc., to kind of help you make that connection. And ultimately, like, the more connections you have, the more stable and healthy the individual tends to be. So doesn't hurt to have more.
For sure. I think we learned a new word, confidentness, I think was the word.
Yes.
I think it's confidence, but
confidence.
Tanner was not an English major, apparently.
No, I was not.
Just teasing.
Yeah.
You know, I heard there's a church actually I know of in the Ottawa area, the Metropolitan Church, and they, when I was a youth pastor, they would reach out every year to find out, hey, if you've got students that are graduating coming to the Ottawa area, we want to get them plugged in and get them connected to community. So it's great to know that there's people out there, there's people like yourself on campus, that even if you are socially awkward, you're nervous about connecting or making connections, that there's people that can help you, get established, and that's really great and so important with the community bit. Do you have any stories, Tanner, of people where community has meant the world, like where you've heard, that people have stayed connected or they've got connected and it's meant all the difference? Like, do you have any kind of personal stories?
Actually, this past year, we had a student who connected to the University of Brock community who was from the Ajax area. Didn't know of any Christian community on her campus, but her youth pastor at our church in Ajax was part of a network of pastors who were part of a committee to connect grade 12 students. So she just had an initiative to tell her pastor, like, I don't know anyone. Please help me find something. And that led to her youth pastor reaching out to myself. And then during that summer, before the fall started of this past year, I connected her to some of the other girls in our group, and that's just been a lifesaver because when fall came, she felt like she belonged to the group without having to ask that question. Will they accept me? Will I belong? So I think that really made the difference, and she's already formed friendships that are really beneficial to her. Faith-wise and character-wise.
That's so awesome. And that's that bit around even the mentoring, having people speak into your life, right? Even as a first-year student there. That's so great. Shifting gears a little bit, like you talked a little bit about how it's not just about spiritual growth, but growth as a person. Academics, particularly this year, starting post-secondary in a global pandemic, it's a little daunting to say the least. But what are some things that students can put in place that help them not be overwhelmed? Because we're hearing about mental health being off the chart, right? And it's the stress levels and anxiety levels. So what can students be doing to not get overwhelmed if they're able, with their academics?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I've learned this year, as I've myself tried to do work from home, but also just talking with students, is especially in an age where we're so digitally connected, where my phone is dinging all the time. It's a little bit nervous. Or where we're on social media and it's so easy to just scroll and keep scrolling to see what's up with friends. It's just to have very firm measures of, I will put my phone downstairs out of reach and I'll keep studying. And then at a certain time you go and check it, take a little bit of a break, and just put it back, resume studying. So little habits like that. But then some of the other things that I would recommend is just like the conversation of time management in general. So I think depending on the individual that you are, you might be very academically hardwired and very disciplined to work, which is great.
That wasn't me, by the way.
Yeah. So I will make a suggestion for those students, and then I'll make a suggestion for you.
Right.
If you're one of those students, prioritize your church community, your social life, and extracurriculars first.
That's awesome.
Because then you're more likely going to have a more balanced, and a healthier lifestyle. Yeah. Whereas if you're someone like John, whose academics wasn't necessarily for the top of his to-do list.
Practical joking was like my best class, but
I can tell. Then maybe prioritize academics first and just say, hey, I'm going to start from 9 and then to 5. And then regardless if I feel prepared for this test or not, just at least I studied. Sure. Yeah. And then it's good from there. And
I think, going back to making fellowship a priority or connecting with other believers, right? That was big. I started out at York University and having a couple of friends, and even a roommate that is an entirely unique story in itself of how we came to be roommates, but both believers, and that meant the world, and having somebody I could connect with in those tough spots, right? So so making that a priority, I love that. That's a great message. That's so great. And now here's a question. We talk about practices that students can put in place now, and even as they're starting to look at school, beyond, or life after high school, and maybe it is YWAM, maybe it is a gap year. How do we bring, God into the conversation? Because the pressure of, just everything where you've got to go and you've got to get a job, and hopefully a high-paying job. And a lot of times it's that vocation, but we're not considering maybe where God is leading out of the student's giftedness. Just, out of their passions, right? Yeah. How do we help students, maybe ask that bigger question? God, how have you made me, and when are you calling me to? Is there anything any insights you can give, on that particular topic?
I know I read books. I'm aware that students are reading less and watching more YouTube videos and stuff, which is great.
Yeah, not the YouTube stuff.
It just,
moderation.
The first, the first thing I'm going to share is just a book that's just in my head. Cool. There's this great book that I really like on that topic called Designing Your Life Following the Spirit's Lead by Dave Evans, and it's really interesting because he's a former engineer, but he takes from the perspective of there's an aspect of the Holy Spirit leading us, and the Christian should be sensitive to where that the Holy Spirit is leading us into. However, it also takes a really good of approach of it's also designing your life, and a good chunk of that book kind of covers questions of it's really important to do helpful self-reflection and examine, because in order to follow the Spirit's lead, you have to know what your skills are, what your passions, what your gifts are, because those skills, gifts, and passions that you have, God gave you. God gave you for the benefit of others, but God also gave you for the simple fact of just having joy. Those things are meant to. So I think there's this really mysterious, wonderful combination of somehow knowing ourselves a little bit more, and the skills kind of coincides with following the Holy Spirit's lead. And I think gap years are a great way to do that, because it kind of helps us know ourselves a little bit better before the Spirit leads us into a more long-term scenario. So
that book definitely will be we'll be looking for that book at some point, because our next series beyond this is about spiritual gifts, and it's talking about how we're wired and what our passions are, our gifts and abilities, and that's where we're not expecting every student to be a pastor, a missionary, a vocational Christian, but wherever you're heading, we definitely want to encourage them to consider the Spirit's leading, because those are arenas of life that we need believers to be present, right, and to be the hands and feet of Jesus. So that's really, really great. What about professors or folks from faiths that are different than our own? Right. And so a lot of times, and I experienced this heading off to York, some real antagonism towards my faith as a Christian, and certainly meeting people from all walks of life, and great conversations and great friendships. But definitely having those conversations around faith and people from a different faith. What does that look like? What would you recommend for students that might experience difficulty from a professor, or just some challenging conversations with people in general around faith? Yeah, it's definitely a multi-sided question. And I think part of the Christian life is just knowing that as being a disciple of Jesus, we're just going to experience costs and trials and tribulations, and that's something that we have to accept. However,
especially at a university where it's not a Christian culture at most public universities. It's a very multi-faith culture and multi-belief system. If it's multi-faith and multi-belief system, odds are is if your professor is being antagonistic towards your faith, that's actually liable grounds to actually push back a little bit and say, hey, that was disrespectful to me, and I don't necessarily want to create a flame war or anything, but I felt like that was not really appropriate. I think a lot of times professors are humans too, and knowing they come from their own pains, their own struggles, and I think that's just really hard to deal with. And sometimes just learning the moment of like, okay, when do I like just let this slide versus when do I actually just call out the behavior for what it is and speak to someone who is a little bit higher up on the
Yeah, we've always talked, and I know you're big on this, is asking questions and listening to others too, right? Which is such a big part of it. Hearing people's stories, and I think not being afraid of that, because that's I remember especially York, meeting people from all different walks and faiths and backgrounds, and genuinely taking an interest, in what their story is, right? So no, that's cool. We mentioned earlier, mental health, and we know that the cases and the requests for assistance and help are skyrocketing, particularly on university campuses. So what resources, how does InterVarsity potentially help, or what resources are available on most campuses? You could speak to Brock maybe, but that are available to students that in those moments where, they're feeling that, man, the avalanche is kind of coming here, who can they reach out to? What are the resources that are available?
The vast majority, like 95% of Christian ministry, I'd say, are very well connected to the mental health resources on campus. So most campuses should have mental health resources, whether they're counselors or whatever. All of InterVarsity staff are mental health first aid certified. So if that's comforting at all to know, but beyond that, I think another strategy to think of is in the city that I'm moving to, are there faith-based counseling options available? Because sometimes when you go to a university that is multi-faith, multi-belief, there might be some things that you might want to talk about, but would be better to talk about with someone who's a faith-based counselor.
For sure.
There's a lot of resources on that. I know with InterVarsity, something that we've been partnering with over the last year is Sanctuary, and they have a great mental health course that we've done with students. So sometimes for small groups or life groups, we've just
done. Great idea. It's great.
Taking them through a mental health course, and that's been really beneficial for them.
Yeah, and I think that's something our students, I mean, that alone is a gem in regards to being able to walk through what the conversation looks like around mental health in a very productive way, faith-based way, and have somebody, walking that with them. I think that's amazing. And I hope that's something that's available on most campuses, if not all, but definitely Brock is what you're saying. So very, very cool. Any Tanner, any stories, like just kind of success stories that you would say, if you could kind of maybe package a story as in terms of just coming into university, post-secondary life, this is somebody that really did well, and there's you can sort of track the steps they had taken to set themselves up well. Not that they're perfect, obviously, but any stories that are just good success stories of doing life well at university.
So I actually also resourced the Western campus a little bit more. So I'm going to share a story of a student named Jensen from the Western University campus. Good example of he did a gap year program from YWAM. He came into university a little bit more mature and grounded than I think a lot of university students. That's not a flack for necessarily, but that was just the case that he was.
That's
and
great.
His youth pastor made a connection to me, and he made an effort to be at the university Bible studies every week. Trying to find a Christian community and making a commitment to at least I will go every week. Online was difficult for him, but he corralled a group of friends and said, let's just check different churches in this new city online together,
Great idea.
which is an amazing idea. He is someone who was willing to lead Bible studies when we asked him later in the year, and he took initiative to say yes to that. And that's been really, really encouraging for the community to see younger leaders stepping up and doing that. And he lived in res in his first year, which was difficult and challenging because res living is not the same this year as it was. But I mean, despite that, like he's been able to make connections with friends in the same dorm in the same building, and he's someone who I think marks a good example of doesn't live within the silo of like sub-Christian culture the whole time, but is willing to, I'm grounded in my faith, I'm grounded in the community that I am, but I'm willing to carve out time in my schedule and feeling comfortable and confident enough to build friendships with people who are a little bit different than him, ask stories, ask faith questions. So I think as a whole, I would love to see what in-person community was like for him, but he's someone who kind of strikes me as like, that was a very successful first year based off of the.
What a great story. And the intentionality of it, drawing others in, community. I feel like that story nailed a lot of the big pieces. I don't know if you have any kind of final parting thoughts for us, but we're going to head into a Q&A time. And obviously, this is recorded, but there will be a live element at some point with you, Tanner. But any closing comments that you would just encourage students, whether grade 9 or grade 12, heading into gap year, work, post-secondary, anything you'd like to share just to encourage them?
I mean, it's very simple, profound truth, but just that God loves you so much, and His grace is unlimited, and you don't have to earn anything for His favor, for His relationship with you. He just loves you so much. So
that's so great.
If anything, learn that.
Very cool.
Know that.
And that's one of those non-negotiables, one of those pillars we absolutely have to grab onto. So, Well, thanks, man, for the time. Thanks for just stepping into this conversation. We appreciate you so much. You're local, which is phenomenal. So a lot of students that are potentially jumping into Brock. What a great resource you are, man. So we're so glad to be connected. Once we get back to some sense of normal where we can get into the building a little more fully, again, want to have you in to even be in person to be able to engage with students and answer some questions.
I would love that.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, hey, we want to say thanks for being a part of this encounter conversation. And as we head into some Q&A, we hope that you'll ask those questions. Don't be afraid to ask the questions you have, because this is an important conversation for us, and particularly for you as you think about life after high school. So thanks for tuning in. We're looking forward to connecting in our breakouts. We're looking forward to our next series called Wired, which is on spiritual gifts. And we've got some other fun things coming up down the road as well. So thanks so much for tuning in. We love you guys, and we look forward to connecting again. God bless.